Hi, I'm Trevor London. In this Pastor's Minute, I'm going to talk about what does God's sovereignty mean to us. It's going to be a long one. So the first thing we need to talk about when we talk about God's sovereignty is that sovereignty is not a word that's in the Bible. Now, before you get upset about that, there are verses that talk about God's sovereignty. Talking about, when he acts, who can withstand him? When he moves, who can argue with him? When he's asked, like what, it's really, he can't be touched. He is God. We can't call him to account. He is God. He is sovereign in that way. And that's a really important distinction than how a lot of people think about God's sovereignty. It all started with Augustine's City of God. Augustine was trying to figure out what to do when, invaders were coming into the eternal city, Rome. And, he came up with this idea that, whatever happens in this world is God's will. We're living for another city, and, we are living for another city. We are living for eternity. But this idea caught hold in the Western church, and really it gave rise to the divine right of kings. If I as a king could conquer you, it was God's will for me to conquer you. And if you as a serf were just, that's all the garbage that you had to do with your life, well, that was God's will for you. It was almost as much as the Hindu belief of karma and dharma. And if you understand that, that's really what it was like in the church as well. Basically, it's God's will if anything happens. And that understanding really lingers on in people's hearts and lives today. And it's a dangerous idea to have. The problem of thinking that everything that happens in this world is God's will because it's happened, we know God's will, it's really a logical problem and a theological problem. If it's a logical problem is if I'm sick and it's God's will for me to be sick, am I trying to get out of God's will by going to see a doctor? You really are. If you believe that it's God's will for you to be sick, you should be happy to stay sick. But intuitively, we know it's not God's will. We know it's not God's will for us to be sick. So we go and get that help. It's available to us. It's absolute foolishness not for us to seek the help of doctors and take the medication that we need to take. It's a theological problem. If everything happens is the will of God, then what about all the ugliness that happens in this world? And then it means that either God isn't good or God isn't great. And quite frankly, I understand atheism when atheists think that way because the church has told them everything that happens in this world is God's will. It really is not. I'm going to give you two examples, and maybe one of them will speak to you more than the other one. They're both they're illustrations. Don't push them too far. We're talking about God here. The first is in Canada, we have a sovereign. Our sovereign is not our prime minister. It's not even the lieutenant governor. Our sovereign is the Queen of Canada, not the Queen of England. Yeah, it's the same person. The Queen of Canada is the same person as the Queen of England, but it's the Queen of Canada who's sovereign in our country. Now, in practice and in history, it really doesn't come into play, right? But on paper, it's the Queen that chooses the prime minister. We don't elect a prime minister. It's the Queen's representative that assigns a prime minister. And by convention, they pick the one who has the most votes. So everyone's happy and we're okay with that. But it's the Queen and her representative that pick the prime minister. It's the Queen and a representative who can prorogue Parliament and say, it's time to restart. It's time to get going. They're the ones that say when government can sit. It's the Queen and her representative that sign every bill into law. Now, again, in practicality, this doesn't have an effect on any of our lives because the Queen knows that to exert that power that she has on paper would cause chaos in our democracy. But the fact of the matter is, we have a sovereign. The Queen is sovereign in Canada. So my question to you is, when, a child is abused, do you blame the queen? Like, couldn't she order someone to make a better law or stiffer penalties? That's never in our thought, right? What if someone drives drunk and kills somebody? Do we blame the queen? No. What if, an earthquake happened? Well, where we live, there's no earthquakes, but a tornado happens, and the insurance companies don't pay out because they find a loophole. Hey, guess what? We don't blame the queen. And yet, we'll blame God. Insurance companies call it an act of God. There are people in the States who have sued God and the church as his representatives for the garbage that happens in their life. Like, why is that? Well, because we teach that if God is sovereign, everything that happens is his will. Oh, okay. That one illustration you might not really get. This one you might not get either. And if there are theoretical astrophysics physicists listening to this, please let me know if I get off base. But the thing I think about quite a bit is gravity. Because gravity is something that, it's a thing that keeps us from falling off the world. It's the thing that if an apple falls from the tree, it hits the ground. And that's a good thing, because if it was random, we would live in a very scary place. It's the thing that makes the moon go around the earth and causes tides and causes weather to happen. It's the thing that the earth goes around the sun and gives us seasons and make sure that we don't spin too far out or lean too far back in. It's the thing that keeps all the planets together in the solar system. It's the thing that keeps a solar system in proper alignment in the galaxy. It's the things that draw the galaxies together and keep us at the right distance apart. It's that big thing. It's that thing that is crazy, crazy important to us. And the amazing thing, as I understand about gravity, is that it makes a mess of the string theory of the universe. We can't have a string theory because of gravity. It doesn't make sense unless you do math in the fifth or sixth dimension before you can make sense of gravity. Why is that? Because gravity, this all-powerful, all-important, all out there thing that's keeping everything in motion, can be overcome by something we all have on our fridge. A simple fridge magnet can keep a paper from falling to the ground. And okay, now just bear with me here. What if, I'm not saying gravity is God, but it has some characteristics of God. That's why I like to think about it. What if God equates to gravity? And what if you and I are that fridge magnet that can keep gravity from doing what it's meant to do? What if a fallen world that is yet to be redeemed is the thing that keeps gravity from doing what it's supposed to do? What if an enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy is what keeps that gravity from doing what it's supposed to do? God is sovereign. When he acts, no one can stop him. When he speaks, we can't argue him. We can't call him to account. He is God. He is not responsible for everything that happens in this world. In the early church, they believed that they were in a battle. First 3 centuries of the church, read the Ante-Nicene or the Pre-Nicene Fathers, and you see a constant theme come up that we're in a battle, but Christ is victorious. Let me set this up for you. One of the temptations Jesus had in the desert was that Satan told him that if you bow down to me, I will give you all the nations of the world. Jesus resisted that temptation, but would it be a temptation if Satan wasn't able to give him that authority? We see that 3 verses after Peter declares, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," Jesus reprimands him with, "Get thee behind me, Satan," because Peter takes him aside, because after this revelation, Jesus starts telling him that I'm going to be suffer and I'm going to be crucified. And Peter takes him aside and says, "Don't you realize I just told you you're the Messiah? You don't have to do it that way. Take the easy way out." And Jesus heard the exact same temptation that he heard in the desert from Satan. Take the easy way out. Don't go the way of the cross. Now, after the cross, after the resurrection, we see in Matthew chapter 28, how does Jesus start the Great Commission? He says, all authority has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples. Literally, therefore, as you go, make disciples. There's something that happened at the cross, something that happened after the resurrection, something that Satan tempted Jesus with, something that was no longer a temptation after the cross. He has all authority. Christ is victorious. It's the job of you and I to enforce that victory, to see that God's will gets done. We do that through prayer. We do that through living the kingdom. We do that through loving others. We do that by keeping in step with the Spirit and doing what He tells us to do. We live in a world that is yet to be redeemed, surrounded by people who are being redeemed or have yet to be redeemed, and we have an enemy that is out to kill, steal, and destroy. We live in a world that is in constant battle. How does this affect you practically? How does God's sovereignty affect you in day-to-day life? Well, the message of the book is that we are in partnership with God. What we say and what we do matters. My prayer becomes more fervent and effectual when I remember that my battle is not against anybody with a body, but against every power and authority in this present darkness. We battle in prayer. We battle when we love. We battle when we see God's will done on earth as it is in heaven. I hope that encourages you. It might not unless you really grasp God's great love and God's great trust in you. He's trusted you to be His co-worker and to bring His kingdom here on earth through love and good works, through prayer and through passion. Have a great one.